Hi, this is Sniz with Bloodbane. I'm going to take a couple of minutes to do a quick video on just kind of to go into some more detail on our shrine saturation strategy, particularly covering some of the terminology we're starting to use as well as some of the priorities. I'm getting a lot of members asking me where do I put my new city. Though, I do want to be kind of following an overall plan and be working from a list of priorities. I don't want to be in a position where I'm saying this member puts that shrine there and all that micromanagement. What I want to do is get our players who are placing and grabbing up the real estate to be working according to a plan and picking their own ideal locations based on priority. There's a number of things to go into it. The most important thing is that we're grabbing up the right spacing around the shrines. Whether you put two on one shrine and move on to another, whether you want to make your first new city on a shrine near your original city, or if you want to move across the continent or whatever. I've got some opinions and suggestions on that I may share later, but the big thing is we want to make sure that we're grabbing the right real estate, the right priorities. So I'm going to jump out quickly to an Excel spreadsheet. This is basically that same shrine. This is the one in the most northern and eastern portion of our continent. Really quick, I guess, back in the game, several of our members have grabbed this one up. We own this shrine, basically. These are all our members. The shrine was empty, and so we're getting a nice jump on getting this shrine fully dominated. Now, when we talk about shrine saturation, I'm kind of, the colors here, the blue is the waterways, the rivers mapped out from that same shrine. The dark blue out here is the sea, and then the tan area is just unlabeled land, basically, off of the map. I just cut and pasted from our existing map. The main thing I wanted to cover here is what you have as far as, this is the shrine itself. I call that tier 0. The 4 square, the 6-9 squares, the square, in this zone is what I call tier 1. This zone is what I call tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, etc. So if we're saying, grab a slot on tier 1 first and slot on tier 1 second and so on, that means any available slot that's not covered by another city or an obstruction, we want to grab that tier 1 slot first. That means within this original inner ring. However, there's another concept at play which has to do with landlocking the shrine. Though most important is grabbing the space immediately around the shrine. When we're looking at kind of keeping out distant invaders coming from other continents, one of the things they need to get in is waterways. So if we can kind of landlock a shrine and push out where their first city can be in relation to where their second city can be, we can slow and ultimately frustrate their advance to the shrine as well. So when we talk about waterway locking, I may say we want to do a full saturation to the tier 2, but hold waterways out to the tier 6 or something like that. So that would mean if I said we had a continent saturated to the second tier and landlocked to the 5th tier, that would mean that every occupiable square within this area would be held, and then in addition to that, we held all of the settleable positions in the waterway out to the 6 number. Now, one quick thing to understand, even though like where I'm targeted right here is touching a waterway, it actually has to be touching the broad section of the waterway. So where I'm targeted right now, the cell that I have highlighted, this is a waterway site. This is not. That little corner touching the bottom corner does not constitute a waterway as far as being able to build a harbor and whatnot. So this is a waterway, this is a waterway, and so on. So if we were, let's go back in the game for a second. So right now, priority 1 is to get the actual full saturation 2 deep. Now within that 2, it's better to grab a non-waterway slot in tier 1 than it is to grab a waterway slot on tier 2. But then once you're on tier 2, it's better to grab a waterway slot on tier 2 before grabbing a non-waterway slot on tier 2. So we have a tier 1, like right now, the next city, ideally in this location, should be right here. That secures that final, immediately adjacent position. We want that tier 1 saturation, so hopefully the next settler grabs that spot. After that, we're working on tier 2, which would be the next priority on this shrine. In that case, we would want to grab this one, this one, this one, this one, and this one first, because those are tier 2 waterways. And then after those were all secure, we'd want to get that, and once we had that, we'd have a tier 2 saturation. I'm holding off. We're going to start off with just getting a tier 1, tier 2 full saturation. If we have a shrine that's full to the second tier, go ahead and start working on the third waterways first. At some point, though, we may stop trying to get a full 3 or 4 saturation. And when I say we want to saturate this tier to the 6th, or this shrine to the 6th tier, what that would mean is even though we might not worry about this spot, which is actually on the on the 3rd tier, because it's landlocked, we would only concern ourselves with these slots that are along the waterways to secure it out to the 6th. So if I were to say, if we wanted to landlock this shrine to the 6th tier, we'd want a city here, here, it's 1, 2, 3, here, 4, 5. We wouldn't need one here, and 6. That would get us out to the 6th. And then along this waterway, same thing. We'd want to grab this one. We wouldn't need to do any of this in here. Actually, no, there are cities in there, so we need these 2 slots and so on. So hopefully that makes sense. You'll hear us talking about, I want to kind of put this out there in terms of what our priorities and goals are as far as what individual members do. I do think it's important to get at least doubled up on each shrine. So once you make a move to a shrine, I'd say if you build your 2nd city on a shrine, your 3rd city should at least be on that shrine. After that, you might build a 3rd city on that shrine, or you might pull up the map and say, hey, is there another shrine close that needs my support more than this one does, because we're good here. That's all just going to be, I want members thinking through this process and picking their own sites based on a list of priorities, not asking me where to place their cities, because number 1, that'll get a little cumbersome, and number 2, I don't want to be in a position where I'm telling people exactly how to play. I want to be in a position where we've got an objective, we've got a plan, we've got a goal, people are on the page, they know what it is. Hopefully our long-lasting members will be generally working towards those goals. But as far as the individual, there's going to be play style. There's going to be people who may want to take a more defensive position than a more aggressive position because they are unable to play as regularly as others. Some people are going to be hardcore and plop down cities left and right. Some people may end up with 3, 4, 5 cities. Everyone's got their place in this, as long as what we probably won't be having with us for long are players who completely disregard our direction and our rules and our goals, and are uncooperative and don't play a team game. But within that context, my goal is to just communicate what we want, communicate what our goals are, and as long as general members are reasonably active and generally working in that direction, that's great. So anyway, feel free to ask me if you have specific questions, but I wanted people to be getting more in the, because this is all I do. When somebody says, hey, where do I place my city? I go here and I look and I say, okay, tier 1, boom. If somebody asked me right now, they're up in the north, and where do I place my city? If they were anywhere near this shrine, I would come here, I'd look at that, and I'd say, you want to place at 36-14, which would be one to the right of the one I have targeted. I wish empty land gave coordinates. It doesn't. Anyway, hope that helps. More to follow.